on this V70 XC today, 2001. Take all the spare wheel out and the inner trim just to give you access to the boot area. I'm going to take this battery cover off, 2 nuts, 1, 2. You can loosen this bolt here, just needs to be loosened. Take that out and the battery cover. You can disconnect the battery, but I'm going to leave it connected because I don't want to lose the stereo code. And then behind this foam cover in the boot liner here are the bolts to hold the bumper on. There are individual cutouts here to expose the bolts, but I'm going to take off the whole panel just to make my life easier. Just stuck on with glue. And then behind this elongated hole at the top here is your first bolt. I don't know if you can see that in there, you can just about make out the head of the bolt. And then moving further along, there's one here, that's bolt number 2. Further along but higher up is bolt number 3, and then further along towards the driver's side is bolt number 4. So there's 4 bolts in total to undo from the inside of the load area. And for the outside of the vehicle, there's a rivet that needs to be drilled out from under here. I've already given this one some abuse, so that should pull out. Let's come away with the bumper now. There is also on each side a Torx screw, a Torx 20 screw inside this aperture here inside the inner wheel arch guard, and that's about 2/3 of the way up the wheel. So Torx 20 each side in that hole, and you've got to take the bolt right out, put it somewhere safe, and that should allow us to pull the bumper away at the top slightly. If you slide the bumper back towards the rear of the car, and it should come away like so. Now this cartridge in here is going to go loose, so we can take that out, put it somewhere safe. That's the sides of the bumpers off. Repeat for both sides. Okay, just a little trick here for when you're taking these bolts out. Take your socket and put some tissue inside it, and that will help to grip the bolt or the nut you're working with, so it prevents it from falling down into the chassis. Alright, so that's the 4 bolts out for the bumper. Now we'll go for lifting it out. Off in one side, we've got the towing eye aperture there, that needs to be unbolted. There's 2 bolts under there. There's one up inside that gap there, and there's another one there. They're both 17mm, so they've both got to come off. I've already got mine loose, as you can see. One. Two. That assembly just drops down to leave you with the mounting plates there. The captive nuts are already in the chassis. And the other side, we have another 2 bolts. These ones hold the exhaust hanger on, so one here and one further back. You can just about see over the back here. Further in, there is a pop rivet that needs to be drilled out immediately behind the rearmost bolt. So, I don't know if you can see that hole there. That's where the exhaust heat shield rivets on. I've had to drill and chisel that one to get it off. And then these bolts come out there to allow the bracket to swing free and expose the other mounting plate face with the captive nuts already inside the chassis. The heat shield's going to get riveted or screwed back on to another part of the tow bar kit as we go. So next part is to get the tow bar cross member assembly out and see how that goes on. So here's the cross member, nuts and bolts, and the tow ball assembly instructions. These spacer plates on the edges, they won't be used unless you're using installing on a 2005 or later vehicle. That's according to the instructions anyway. So I'll chuck that to the side. As you can see, the bolt holes here are going to line up with what we've taken off. There's 3 bolts on each side to go in, even though we've only taken 2 out. And when we want to install this passenger side, the UK model, we're going to pop that on the underside as well, and that's going to give us a pop rivet location for the heat shield to go back on. So that fits on like so. So we've got 6 of these M12 washers, bolts and washers to go on. I'm going to get that up in position and then come back to you. Just a quick note here, this mounting plate for the exhaust rubber is going to come all the way off. We're not using that anymore. Reason being is there's a hanger already part of the framework there for the exhaust hanger before I try wrestling this back up under the vehicle. Just some blocks of wood to hold it up on one side while I bolt the other side up, and then I should be able to just offer this up, stick the bolts in, and then that will be supported before we can bolt it all up to the necessary torque. The only difference being on this side, exhaust hanger now missing because it goes onto this black peg here, and at the very furthest forward bolt I've added the little bracket for the heat shield to go back onto, and there's a total of 1, 2, 3 bolts to go on. Before you put the bolts in, you take the bolt, lock washer and flat washer, and install it to the car. You might be as well to stick some Loctite on there too, just to be doubly sure. But essentially that lock washer is the locking device, so your choice if you stick thread lock on there. So 3 bolts this side, 3 bolts the other. The way I've done it is get the cross member secured up there. Do the bolts up snugly first, and then do these centre bolts up tight first, and then do centre bolt, and then to the other side do the centre bolt, and then you can do the other 2 to the correct torque setting. All the torque settings are on the instructions, because you'll you'll either damage the threads or it won't be tight enough. All the lock washers and the flat washers are on there as they should be. Next stage is to assemble this centre yoke and make the bumper cut. So I'm probably going to offer the bumper up to the vehicle first, mark it out, and then make the cut. Once I've got this bumper offered back on, then I'll come back to the camera again and show you how I'm going to do that. And as you can see, we've got to make a bumper cut here and allow for the protrusion of this yoke assembly. I've marked out 60mm wide and 80mm deep for my cut. I'm going to go and make the cut with either a jigsaw or even just a sharp blade might be enough. We'll move on to that stage in a moment. So that tells me where I've got to make the cut. So I'm going to take the bumper back off and start cutting it to pieces. So after marking out where I wanted my bumper cut, I've made the cut as per instructions. It's not exactly very pretty, but allegedly this is a non-visible bumper cut to allow this yoke to pass through the middle. And then after that we're going to move on to fitting the tow bar and the tow ball itself. So I'm just going to refit the bumper through the stud holes. Are going to fit through 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to just try it out first just to see if it's any good or if we need to make any further cuts. Okay, so I've tried the bumper on a few times and I've got the cuts that I want. Before it goes on for a last fit, put your exhaust hanger back on, and you can't see it here, but stick your pop rivet through the exhaust heat shield and the bracket. If you haven't got a pop rivet gun, either use a large self tapper or an M6 bolt or something like that to go through there. I don't have that at the moment. I'm going to get a pop rivet gun onto that later. It's easily accessible where it is. So make sure everything under here is done. Double check your bolts and then go for a final fit. Before we fit the bumper, take these bumper brackets that we took off earlier and need to line up those two L-shaped tags into the two elongated holes which become grooves. So we're going to put the L-shaped tabs and the screw fastener facing in towards the car until it goes flush, until they're both in, and then slides forward, and that won't come back out now for the moment. We then take a Torx 20 screw, just turn it in until it starts off. Just keep turning that screw in until you get to the point where the bracket won't slide back and off. So it slides back, but it won't come far enough back because the screw's holding it. So that's what we want. So I can leave that in the back position for now. It's not going to fall out. Same with the other side. Slides forward, slides back, but it won't come out. So we can leave that in the slid back position. The point worth mentioning, before we assembled this bumper, I noticed inside this hole here on the driver's side, on the right hand side, there's an electrical connector with one pin on it, and that goes to this unit here. To be honest, I don't think it's ever been connected because there's the connector pin is dirty inside. I'm not sure what that is. That could be a crash sensor or something as far as I'm concerned, or just a blanking plug, but I'm going to refit that. Once that's back on and through the hole, we can access that through the quarter panel, which I've taken this panel out behind the right hand side rear light. And this green box is where that wire goes to. So once the bumper's back on, it'll protrude through to the inside of the car and I can reconnect it. Okay, so I've had to go back and fit the spacer plates to the tow bar cross-member mounts because my bumper wouldn't go on. But essentially I've just installed the bolts loosely inside here, inside the boot cavity, and I've come back around and installed the side panels, which I'll show you how to do next. If it'll let me give me the bumper back, that is. Right, so this is the situation once you've got the bolts hanging on inside the boot cavity. You've got this tab here which comes into this spring clip just in here, and you've still got your cartridges on here that slide back and forward. They can stay in the rearward position, and then you've got clips that clip in along under the body of the vehicle. So just line it up, get it so it's going to be a little bit overhang to begin with, and then hopefully I can do this one-handed. Alright, preferably while you're still fitting the back end of the bumper, you need to make sure that this groove here, there's a raised tag. We need to make sure that the bumper tag, which is just inside here, difficult to see, goes behind that tag there. So in this instance I'm going to push the bumper back, to get it to go behind there. As you can see, it fits nice and flush. Just got to bring the bumper forward now. Bring the bumper forward, clip it into place. Make sure you've got your bumper lip over the cartridge and over the wheel arch liner. Then you can start to tighten the screw, and that'll bring the cartridge out to lock into the shape of the bumper. And then as far as the bumper work's concerned, that's complete. Come back down and tighten that in a moment. This is just what I've got. The tow bar sticking out the bottom bumper there, which I can attach the detachable slot to. Fitment. The cut's been made, it goes either side of the receiver. The two longer M12 bolts go through and hold the welded tag on the right hand side. On the rearmost bolt, or the frontmost bolt should I say, I've put the electrical socket hanger and bolted the socket to its securing bolt holes. The cabling goes up through a grommet. This is also dedicated wiring from Volvo, it's all supplied. So that goes through the fitted grommet, which you just pull out a blanking plug from the next to the battery for that one, and then that goes through to the boot well and into a dedicated wiring plug just here. Literally snap those plugs together and you get your rear lights on the trailer. You may need an extra fuse and maybe a couple of relays in order to make the fog light and everything as it should do. They're quite often supplied in kits, so I haven't bothered with the relay or the fuse. I'm just going to go with the regular lights. The fog light I haven't checked to see if that works yet. And the cabling comes up through alongside the battery there. Tie it up with some cable ties, plug it in, and straight away I've got lights on my trailer. No warning lights on the dash, everything's working as it should. And then from there it's a question of poking the detachable neck in, fitting your tow ball with the 2 bolts supplied, and using your pin and lock mechanism to hold it tight. That will vary from tow bar to tow bar system, but that's essentially the job complete.